Hello, everyone. My name is Jordana Thompson, and I am a program coordinator with JA of New Mexico. Thank you for attending our virtual career speaker series. This program is open to JA students across New Mexico and highlights business professionals, entrepreneurs, and innovative thinkers from a variety of industries. Each featured speaker will share details about their education, job, and career journey. Before we get started, there are a few virtual meeting etiquette reminders. This recording will be posted on our YouTube channel for anyone who is unable to attend today's session. Feel free to send that YouTube link to anyone in your network. At this time, please type your first and last name into the chat if you haven't already done so. Just so we know you're here, and educators, let us know how many students you have on the call with you as well. During the speaker's presentation, please make sure all mics are muted. If you have questions during the presentation, please write them down or type them in the chat box, and we will address them during the Q&A portion of our event. So today, I'm so excited to welcome Mario Burgos, President and CEO at Burgos Group. I will share my screen, and Mario, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Jordana. And thanks everybody for joining me. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, my company, and how I got from where you're sitting right now. I'll go back as far as middle school to where I am today. So it's my entrepreneurial path. If we go to the next slide. So really important for talk about an entrepreneurial path is understanding what's entrepreneurship. And so there's a Harvard Business School professor who said entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity without regard to resources currently controlled. I'll put that in another way. Basically, entrepreneurs are people who don't have any money necessarily of their own, don't necessarily have the skills, don't necessarily have the ability, but they have a desire, even though they don't control all those things, to create something. And that's really kind of, as we move through my story on the next slide, that's who I was and that's where I started. So a couple different pictures of me at different phases. In the top corner, apparently I'm old because some of these pictures are black and white. But at the top corner, you'll see a family photo with a little arrow pointing to me. That little arrow pointing to me was actually when I was about 2 years old and living in Ecuador. My father's from Ecuador, so I'm a first-generation American on my father's side. And we actually lived there for about 2 years when I was 2 until I was 4. If you slide down to, if we look at the next picture down, you'll see me sitting with my grandparents on my mother's side. And they're actually immigrants from Eastern Europe. And so I'm a first-generation American on one side and second generation on the other. And you'll see me, I'm the oldest of the 3 boys in that picture. The one with the glasses, which I've had to wear since I was 8 years old, but only put them on for that picture because my mother told me I should look like my grandparents and put my glasses on. At the kid in the red shirt is my middle brother, Dave, and then the baby is my youngest brother, Daniel. Interesting enough, my brother Dave is my partner right now in my business. So I have a family business. The picture of me sitting against or leaning against a tree is actually when I was in high school. So the other picture with the glasses, I'm about 12 years old. High school, that's my graduation yearbook picture. Everybody knows how everybody gets those yearbook pictures done. And then as I move through life, you know, at some point, and I'll take you guys through this, I actually worked as an actor in California on my journey, but made more money as a dancer than I ever made as an actor doing country western dance and videos and TV shows and movies. And that was a group that I was dancing with. I'm in the middle. And then you have in the bottom right-hand corner, you have a picture of a bald guy, which means it's closer to me now. And that's talking at a national conference for the Society of American Military Engineers, where I'm on their national board, which is interesting because I didn't have the privilege of serving in the military, nor am I an engineer, but I'm on their leadership group nationally. And so as we go through this, you'll see it's, to me, and this is a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote, it's not the destination, it's all about the journey. It's the journey that really counts. And if we go to the next slide, before we get further into my journey, I'm going to have to kind of give you the philosophy that's directed my journey, and that is fail forward. And you'll hear that as I talk about a lot of the different jobs that I've held in different positions. I have failed over and over and over and over again, although failure is relative, and we'll talk about that. And essentially, I do everything backwards. Very often I try something, then I learn more about it after it doesn't quite work out. Then I grow based on what I've learned. Then I try again, and then I learn, and then I grow, and I just keep doing that. And we'll see that as we go to the next slide. So I am 52 years old. I've been working since I was 12. I've been working for 40 years. My first job was delivering newspapers in New Jersey. I was born in New York. I mentioned my father was from Ecuador. My mother was from New York, and they met there. I was born there. We moved down to Philadelphia, Ecuador, then New Jersey. And in New Jersey, I got my first job at 12 years old delivering newspapers. That was because that was the youngest you could get that job. And I already had that entrepreneurial spirit in that I really wanted to grow. So I had a small newspaper route. Then every time somebody would drop a route, I would pick it up until I picked up one route after another. Then I realized, even at an early age, that 12 years old was the youngest you were allowed to deliver newspapers. But I had friends who were 11 that couldn't deliver newspapers yet, but they could work for me. So I would have them go deliver the newspapers. And if I got 5 cents a newspaper, I'd give them 2 cents for the newspaper to deliver on their street. And then that was one of the ways I was able to do more deliveries. From there, I went on. By 14 years old, I became a bookkeeper for my parents. By 16, I was doing sales. I went into retail stores. I worked at a clothing store in a mall because I wanted the discount on clothes, while I was actually doing the bookkeeping in my parents' business, which was a seafood wholesale business. And then when I had a license, which I got at 16, I actually started driving trucks for my parents, delivering seafood, which I do not recommend, because it is almost impossible to get the smell of fish off of you every day as you're delivering fish. No matter how many showers, no matter how many times you wash your clothes, everything always still smells like fish. I will tell you, since there are some middle schoolers, in middle school, I was a good student, but sometimes I was a little bit of a challenge, I guess. Like I remember, it's a long time ago, but I remember in 6th grade, one of our activities was we had to write a letter to the editor. And so the letter to the editor I chose to write was about the poor quality of the school food. That actually, I thought it was a good article, and I submitted it. And next thing I know, I was actually invited to go talk to the vice principal, who suggested that although that would be something they would look at, maybe I would want to write about something else, because I don't necessarily need to send a letter to the editor from a 6th grader that says that the school food is bad. And I thought about it, and I was a respectful student, so I turned around and pulled that letter and wrote something else. I don't remember what I wrote next. Interestingly enough, though, about a month later, kids in my school, the food was really, really bad, actually went on strike, and nobody would buy food at the school. And news crews, television crews came in. One early lesson that taught me was, hey, I had kind of discovered something that wasn't right, and I really should have stuck with it, even though I was only 12 years old. But moving on, this takes you through until I graduate high school, which I went to high school in Philadelphia. And if I go to the next slide, you have my next years. And really, this is from college until I hit 34 years old. And I did a bunch of different things. I went to college. I'm the first one in my family to go and get a 4-year college degree. My parents have high school degrees. My brothers, one went to a tech school. The other one went to a 2-year art college. But I had a 4-year undergraduate degree, and I'm the oldest, so I was the first one to go to school and go to college. I will confess, I was a good student, I scored high on tests. But once I got to college, I didn't really, since I've been working since I was 12, and I was working while I went to school, because unfortunately for me, my parents actually lost their business. They went bankrupt the same year I was going to start college. And so I worked full time while I went to school, and I didn't give school all the attention I should have. That's the bad news. In fact, I got in on an academic scholarship, and I lost that academic scholarship after the end of my first year, because I was working 40 to 50 hours a week while I was going to school. towards the end of my 4 years, I buckled down and actually cut back my hours, cut back my spending, still paid for school through student loans and working, and raised my grade point average. But I will tell you, that for a student that went in on an academic scholarship, my GPA was like a 2.3, which was brutal. When I graduated school, I actually went to Ecuador for a year, and my grandfather owned and my father had gone down also to help him out as he was closing out his affairs. And I went down too, and I ran a shrimp packaging plant for about a year, worked on my Spanish, which was not very good. And then I say graduate, but I hadn't actually graduated. I walked through graduation and gotten my, through the ceremony, but I had one last class I still needed to pass because I hadn't always buckled down. And so I came back from Ecuador and for that a year later and took that last class. And then I officially graduated. And when I came back, my father told me, hey, you really shouldn't go back to Ecuador. You should go do some other stuff. And mostly everybody wanted me to go to law school. But I changed my mind and decided to go to LA and be an actor. So I drove across country to be an actor. Then when I was in LA acting, I started teaching, substitute teaching, because that was the only job I knew that they would call me every morning to see if I was available. So I spent 5 years substitute teaching while I was acting. And I did actually get into the Screen Actors Guild and do a movie and do some other stuff. But as I noted earlier, I actually made more money as a dancer. Did that for about 5 years, and in the interim got married and started to have kids and realized that, hey, acting's probably not the career to support a family, and I really want one. So I went back to school and got a master's degree. When they looked at my undergrad grades, they said, hey, you're going to have to take a GRE test, a test to see whether or not you can actually get into this program. And then they looked at my test scores and said, your test scores and your undergraduate grades really don't match because you score really high, but you have really low grades. I said, I know, I didn't apply myself. But I did get into that program and I got a master's. And then when I left there, believe it or not, I actually got my next job was with Junior Achievement. I was a program manager at Junior Achievement, teaching an education program manager in Los Angeles. And so I was out getting teachers to sign up for the program and training volunteers. And I had a blast doing that. And I went over to the president of Junior Achievement of LA and said, hey, how do I move up in the not-for-profit world? He said, you got to raise money. I said, okay. And he said, but you're really good as a program manager, so let's set a goal for you to raise $20,000 over the next year and see how that goes. So 6 weeks later, I had raised $20,000 and said, now what do I do? And then I moved on and actually came to New Mexico because in LA, I had met Roxanne and married her. We had kids. And apparently, I didn't know this, but if you marry a 9th generation New Mexican, you're going to raise the 10th generation in New Mexico. So we came to New Mexico to raise our kids. And I became the president of Junior Achievement in New Mexico. I did that for a couple of years and then decided to run for office as a political candidate. I ran, I lost. I also turned around and decided I really wanted to do something in the community. And I thought I could do more working in the community and supporting not-for-profits than working for a not-for-profit. And so I looked at changing a career again. And that gets us up to 34. So essentially, up to this point, I've had bad grades. I've only done a job in Ecuador for a year. I didn't stick to teaching. I didn't stick to acting. I didn't stick to the not-for-profit. I failed at a political candidate. And so when you look at that resume, I had to figure out what to do next. So if we go to the next slide, and I'm 35 years old by the time I started doing this. So the next thing I do is political blogging because I like politics. Had a lot of fun doing that. Actually ended up with more TV time and radio time doing that than I ever did as an actor, although that didn't really pay the bills. But it did help me launch a marketing communications firm. And that grew from 3 people to we became the 8th largest marketing advertising company in the state. Unfortunately, we were focused on home builders and land developers. So in 2007, I once again failed because that business, we lost 90% of our business in 10 days. And 2008, 2009 was the first time in my life that I didn't see an opportunity to make money, except the federal government was spending money. And so I decided, okay, well, I'm going to go become a federal contractor. So remember that entrepreneurship. I had no resources, I had no experience, but I figured I could go learn how to do this. And so I'm going to go try, then I'm going to learn, then I'm going to grow, and I'm going to keep doing that. And I did. I did that. I still own that company. That's Burgos Group. In 2014, we were successful enough that we bought another company, and we is my brother and I, my middle brother. And it's an electrical construction firm that we just renamed Get Volts. They have been around for 35 years. And so now I own two companies in New Mexico. I've had as many as 195 employees, and all of this with a really weird background. Go to the next slide. And next slide. No. Oh, there we go. So I had a 10-year plan for this federal contracting business. I was doing $90,000 in revenue in 2009, and I wanted to go to $100 million in revenue in 10 years. And I did figure if I missed it by half and I did 50 million in revenue, I would still be knocking it out of the park. 90,000 to 50 million in 10 years. And I actually told people that. And if you go to the next slide, that was my plan. The reality is I failed. We did 25 million. So if you think about that in test scores, for example, so I was shooting for 100 million, that's 100%. I figured if I did half, if I did 50%, which is a fail, if you've got 50% on a grade usually, then I would still be doing great. Instead, I ended up with 25%, which you would think was a fail. I thought it was a fail, but it's all, go to the next slide, it's all relative. Failing to hit my goal, I was still ended up being on the Inc. 5000, which is the fastest private growing companies in America, privately held, and for 6 years running. In fact, of the 5,000 companies that show up on the Inc. 5000, only 3% have ever made it 6 times. And we made it 6 times in a row. Plus, we were recognized by the Small Business Administration, the Society of American Military Engineers. So failure is relative, and it's one of the things you learn as an entrepreneur. Go to the next slide. Missed that goal, but today we have $12.4 billion in contract capacity. We've worked in all these states from California to Alaska, Florida to New York, and everything you see in a darker gray. And yes, that's a B of the contracts that we can go after, even though we're still a really relatively small company, but it's an opportunity is huge for us. Keep going. And on a personal note, and as we kind of wrap this up, it's not just in business that I failed. And I keep reemphasizing failure because it's failing to meet certain goals, but you set big goals for yourself. So here's an example. In 2014, I decided I wanted to fly. And so I decided to work on a pilot's license. And that picture is from December of 2014, which is after my first, and pay attention to this, my first successful solo, which means I went up by myself and flew the plane. That's after my first successful solo. It wasn't after my first solo attempt though, because 3 months earlier, hit click again. That same plane looked like this when I tried to fly it. I actually crashed, and we don't have enough time for me to go into all this, but I'm a pretty lucky guy, so I'm here to talk to you about and continue going. And this was in the middle of when I'm growing my business. Again, keep failing forward. Learn from it, move forward. Next slide. So biggest lessons, things that I've learned along the way. I've said it over and over again. You got to be willing to fail. By the way, willing to fail doesn't mean not trying. It really means trying your hardest. And if you fail, that's okay, as long as you put in your best effort. That's what I've learned, and it's what I keep doing. Volunteering. So junior achievement was really the first time I got involved. I was working as a staff person, but really learned about volunteers. And I learned about the amazing opportunity to learn how business works, not only from an organization like JA, but also by volunteering, and the people that I got to be involved and around by volunteering, and the rewards that came from doing it. So you're never too young to start volunteering and helping out in your community. And you should always do that. Another thing is saying yes. I've had some tremendous opportunities in my life because I say yes to people. But also the other side of that is I surround myself with people that if I say yes, I'm not going to get in trouble. For example, I have a friend that said, hey, let's go hike up La Luz, which I hadn't done before. And I said, sure. And we hiked up La Luz. And he's like, let's go hike the Grand Canyon, rim to rim to rim. And so I did that, which was 45 miles in 2 days. And I really liked that. So I realized I liked hiking. And I went to Machu Picchu and hiked that for a couple of days. And then 2019, I hiked Kilimanjaro. So the ability of saying yes opens up a world of opportunity. Set really big goals. We tell people to manage your expectations, but set really big goals. So I think that's really, really important, because when you set those really big goals and you don't quite hit them, you still achieve some amazing things. Friends and family are at the center of everything. Never stop learning. I still read a couple hours every day. I listen to podcasts, things like that. I stay active, stay fit. I've always been athletic, never really an athlete. Don't ever stop dreaming. I'm 52 and I'm still imagining what my future can be, and you should too. And then look for adventure, seek adventure, be curious, check things out. Those are all the biggest lessons I've had, and they keep kind of giving me new opportunities. And moving on from there, just so you have an idea, to me, this is the most exciting time to be an entrepreneur, because there's so much information out there. These are some podcasts that I listen to, and anybody can listen to them. And I love the idea that one in the right-hand corner, Entrepreneurial Thought Leadership, is from Stanford University, which Stanford was a school that I was told I couldn't get into when I was in high school. And I didn't apply. I regret that, actually. But I didn't apply for Stanford, but now I can take courses at Stanford by listening to their podcast for an hour, which is the same as if I'm paying to go to there. Next slide. One last thing. And this is the final thought before we go to questions, and that's on the role of luck. So obviously, I've had a lot of luck in my life, and the plane crash is one example. That's not the only crash I've ever had. Click again, and they say being lucky is being in the right place at the right time. And I will go one step further, and that is, not only is it being in the right place at the right time, but you got to show up to ever be in the right place at the right time. And so make sure you keep showing up. And that is kind of how I got from where you are to where I am. I believe that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mario. Let's go ahead. At this time, we'll be moving into our Q&A portion of the event. I'll start off by asking a question that our participants asked before the presentation today. How did working at JA prepare you for your move to the Burgos Group?
So that's a great question. It prepared me in a couple ways. Number one is, when I was a president of Junior Achievement, I had a board of directors. Actually, I had two, because I ran Junior Achievement in New Mexico, and then I went down and helped take over and turn around Junior Achievement in El Paso. And what I realized was I had some really, really smart, capable people that were sitting on my board and helping. And particularly in El Paso, I worked with a lot of CEOs of very large companies, and realized really quickly that those CEOs were not necessarily the smartest people in their company. They were the people who knew how to hire the smartest people. And that's one of the reasons I've been able to do so many different things in Burgos Group. I mean, I didn't really go into it other than to say we've grown a lot, but we've done everything from constructions to warehousing support to groundskeeping for Air Force bases and a whole bunch of other stuff across the nation. And that's because I've hired really smart people. And I learned that by being part of Junior Achievement. I also learned by being part of Junior Achievement, as well as other not-for-profits, and this is that entrepreneur thing where you don't have cash to grow your business. The first time I landed contracts when I grew my company, I didn't have the money and I couldn't get the banks to lend me money. And so learning how to raise money at Junior Achievement actually taught me how to raise money when I was running my own company. And I will say 1/3 part of Junior Achievement, not just working there, but volunteering as a JA volunteer. The thing, and I don't know if it's still in a JA program, but one year I taught the 5th grade program of Junior Achievement. And in that program, it had a quote that we taught as part of that program, which was, success is the progressive realization of a worthwhile goal. I looked it up later and found out it was Earl Nightingale who said it. I never knew how to define what success is. Is it how much money I make? Is it what the impact is? And now I've realized that just rang true for me. And that came true for me so much so that the mission of my company is to provide opportunities for success with that definition of success in mind. And so those are different ways that JA kind of helped me out.
Wonderful. All right, now if anyone would like to unmute and ask a question, you may now, or if you would rather use the chat box, then I'll try and I'll read those questions out loud as well. Oh, looks like I have one in Miss Townsend's class. Go ahead.
How did you raise the money when you were working for JA?
So that's a great question. How did I raise the money when I was working for JA? That was, in Los Angeles, I looked at companies that were supporting, because junior achievement had always been supported by businesses. And I looked at the kind of businesses that were supporting junior achievement. And in Los Angeles, what I did was I looked at an area. LA had a huge area they oversaw, including from Los Angeles all the way up to other counties, Ventura County, Santa Barbara County, and San Luis Obispo County, which are north of Los Angeles. And so I looked at the types of companies, banks and entrepreneurs and oil companies and others that were supporting junior achievement. And I went to another geography that didn't have junior achievement program and didn't have support, and started raising money there. Ultimately, I ended up raising almost $300,000 a year to launch a new junior achievement program on the central coast of California before coming to New Mexico. And then I had to do the same thing in New Mexico and El Paso.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We've got someone in the chat in Miss Casey's class. Andrew wants to share that he too wants to become a businessman someday, and he was inspired by your story.
I'm glad to hear that. And I look forward to working with you in the future.
And we've got another question from Miss Magalona's class. What kind of conflicts do you have in your work, and how do you resolve them?
We have all kinds of conflicts in work. So work, what I found is that the same sort of conflicts you have when you're younger, whether it's in your family or at school, also carries over to work. And what I didn't tell you is what my graduate and undergraduate degrees are in. So I mentioned I went for a master's, and maybe I said I was going for a master's in counseling and school psychology. And then for a variety of reasons, I decided to switch out of counseling for school psychology and instead did it for business, industry, and government. I will tell you that master's in counseling for business, industry, and government has served me incredibly well, in that it taught me how to listen. I'm originally from the East Coast, and a lot of people don't talk over each other a lot. And that happens, that's most of the conflicts that we find that happens in the workforce, whether it's within my own employee group, my team at my office, or out in the field, or it's with a customer, or it's with suppliers, and learning how to listen and deal with those conflicts and respect that everybody has a different opinion. I'll go one step further. Probably my brother, Dave, that's my partner, says that I'm forever changing my mind. So when I was in politics, that would be considered a bad thing, because that's you're flip-flopping from back and forth. In business, it's actually a really good thing. In business, it's not called flip-flopping, it's called pivoting, which means you have new information and now you say, wait a minute, with that new information, maybe the way I feel is not 100% right. And I will tell you, whatever you're going to do, if you can take that new information, always be open to new information, take that new information, digest it, think about it, and be willing to change your idea. That's probably the most important way I've ever dealt with conflict.
Great. Let's jump to Ms. Townsend's class, and then I have a couple more questions in the chat after Ms. Townsend's class. Go ahead.
How did you survive the plane crash? Like, was it just luck, or did you do something to, like, save yourself?
It was luck. I will say that first and foremost. I had actually flown up and around. When you fly a solo, you go up in a plane by yourself, your flight instructor. You've flown, in my case, I'd flown actually probably 19 hours, which is, people do it with as few as 9 hours, but it's whenever your flight instructor decides you're good enough. And then you have to go up by yourself and go around and land 3 times. So I went up and around and landed the first time, no problem. I went up the second time and went around and went to land. And when I came down, I actually flared too early and was bouncing down the runway. So I had to do a go around, which is put in power. And I started falling to the left as I was doing that. And I'm fighting to climb. And what's interesting about that crash is my flight instructor was watching me and I knew what I was doing as I'm controlling it, even though it didn't seem like it by the outcome. But he actually watched me and said, hey, pitch down, which is how you pitch down to get air under your wings again. And I said, say what? Because I knew I wasn't stalling, but he was afraid I was stalling. And so he told me to pitch down. Well, when I pitched down, I was looking at a hangar and it just filled my windshield. Then I yanked it up and then went up. And then I went into this like thing like this where you're basically I'm going to crash. And now I have to pitch down and I'd fallen between 2 hangars. So I was lucky because that plane did not have a seatbelt and I actually went through the wall. I missed, there was a vehicle in there. There was an I-beam. I missed that. Any of those I'd hit any of those, I would have died. But one of the things they always tell you when you're flying a plane is don't ever stop flying. So I never stopped flying, even as I was flying through the side of the building. And therefore I'm alive. In fact, I went up and flew again a couple weeks later after they found me a new flight instructor. And I wanted to go fly again that day because in order to move past that and check that off, you need 3 full stops. So land 3 times. And technically any landing that you walk away from is a good landing. So I already had 2. I wanted to, fly one more time, but obviously the plane couldn't fly in the condition it was in. Any other questions? You're welcome.
Go ahead, Ms. Townsend. We'll do one more from your class, and then we'll get the 2 in the chat.
Hi, my name's Kason. Have you ever thought about making inventions to help you with your business?
So, yes, Jason, I have. The problem is I'm really good at ideas. I'm not really good at the science part behind the ideas or the engineering side behind it, which means I need to find those people to do them. So I always have these ideas. Like, for example, living in New Mexico, everybody knows you should wear sunscreen because the sun's really strong and we're at a really high altitude. And a lot of guys that I know and girls don't like to wear sunscreen. So I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool? But I do shower every day. So what if I just had something where I washed myself with soap and when I left the shower, I had sunscreen on me and I was covered. I have absolutely no idea how to do that, but I'm pretty sure it would make a fortune. So if you're into science, study chemistry, give me a call when you're done, and then we can go figure out how to do it.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We have to excuse ourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Townsend's class.
Thank you.
There's just a couple questions here in the chat from Ms. Casey's class. What inspired you to deliver newspapers, and how many jobs do you have now? Asks Joseph.
So what inspired me to deliver newspapers was I wanted money. I saw my parents working and I wanted to work. I didn't just deliver newspapers. I also washed cars and mowed lawn. I was just trying to get money. And because there was things I wanted and my parents didn't like to give us stuff. They said, if you want to go get something, go make money to do it. And so like I said, since I was 12, I've always had different jobs. Right now, technically, I have one job. But I own multiple companies. So I'm chairman of a holdings company that owns my other companies, and that I own I created a company that's invested in some land that I'm partners in. I have Burgos Group, which is my federal contract business, which is primarily construction across the United States for different agencies, from FAA to the Army Corps of Engineers to the Navy and everybody in between. I have the electrical company that I bought, that I'm president of that as well. And there's a possibility I will own some other companies in the not too distant future. So now I only have one job as the leader. I'm just doing that same job across different companies.
Great. And then one more question from Seth. What was it like to be an actor?
It was a lot of fun and very humbling, because I thought I was good. I wasn't really that good. And no matter how, I mean, you got paid really well when you got in a real movie, but the most I ever had was 1 day of pay on that. So, if I landed a couple different roles, it was like you worked 5 days out of the year. So I found that even though I made a lot more money on that 1 day or 5 days or 10 days that I might find something, I could make a lot more money working steadily daily. I will say though, one of the things, because you guys saw, I did a lot of things early when I was young, and I have 2 sons that are now, one graduated community college, one graduated UNM. My older son, Griffin, is a teacher, and first-year teacher in Florida, and of middle school, I should say, math and science. And my younger son, Ethan, is graduated culinary arts, and he's working as a sous chef in San Diego. And so the advice I gave to them, which is the advice I had when I was younger, is you can do all kinds of things when you're younger. You don't have to worry about how much money you're going to make before you start a family or have different responsibilities, as long as you can take care of yourself. And the one secret to success, though, is don't ever spend more money than you make. So we build wealth not by making a lot of money, but by spending less money than we make. And that was one of the reasons I was able to be an actor. So I have no regrets of spending that time doing that. Doing other things that didn't necessarily pay as high as what I do now. In fact, I would say that being an actor has really helped me a lot, because I do spend a lot of time in front of groups of people and talking, and being an actor helped me get used to it and comfortable with that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mario. Students, we hope you enjoyed today's program. Before we log off, just a couple of announcements. Following this presentation, you will be asked to complete a post-program mindset survey. By completing the survey, you will be entered into a drawing for a chance to win a Dion's gift card. So teachers, please make sure you share this link to the survey with your students, and we will pick the winner on Monday. So thank you again so much, Mario, and to everyone for joining us on the call. That is it for our virtual career speaker series, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.